This Empire Witch Hunter is a beautiful model, but he's only available in FINECAST. As Games Workshop transitions away from using that, you're going to find it harder and harder to get a hold of this figure and add it to your collection. When I decided to make this video, I thought I'll just really focus it on the Empire because there are so many beautiful models in the Empire range that have sadly been lost to the mists of time. What up, players? It's WarbossTae up in this mug. I'm doing videos on YouTube about miniatures, painting, collecting, and the miniature hobby, so if that's something you might enjoy, I hope you subscribe. Today we're counting down the top 10 out-of-print, old-school Empire models, and we're starting with this one. Number 10 is the Blessing of Sigmar. It's a 2-model piece that comes on a single cavalry base, and it is a warrior priest of Sigmar who's blessing a handgunner. This is only available in metal, and I love the detail of the handgunner reverently holding his weapon out, looking for the blessing, and the warrior priest who's so seriously blessing his handgun. Number 9 is Kurt HELBORG, the Reichsmarschall. He is the leader of all the knights of the Empire. They all answer to him, and it's a beautiful model because it's one of the only models where he is in mid-charge. In the Empire range, you see a lot of knights trotting, holding their banners and their spears up, or just kind of cantering on their horses, but the Reichsmarschall is charging with the sword aimed at an angle you don't see other miniatures holding their weapons at. It's a beautiful model, and I love how it catches the motion of Kurt HELBORG in mid-charge. Number 8 is a chief engineer on mechanical steed. Who knew Games Workshop wanted to go with such a steampunky aesthetic for their Empire miniatures? He's holding a repeater pistol. It's got those different barrels that are supposed to rotate with each shot. I love the headdress he's got. He's a learned man of science. He's creating all these inventions that he uses in the heat of battle. His mechanical robot horse is just hilarious. I love this model, and you can only get it in metal. The next on our list is LUDWIG SCHWARTZHELM. He is the champion of the Emperor, I believe. He's like the judicial champion, so whenever the Emperor has to settle fights in the ring, this is the guy he calls. He also, as a part of that duty, holds the Imperial Standard into battle. I love this model. You don't really get a good feel for how big this flag is from this angle, but it is a huge flag packed with details. One of the first flags that they molded so you could really pick out the detail and color it yourself and not have to worry about the arduous task of freehanding that design. LUDWIG SCHWARTZHELM. Next, in one of Games Workshop's narrative campaigns, they had a character named Valten, who was born with the birthmark of Sigmar, the twin-tailed comet, on his chest. And he is just a simple blacksmith until Karl Franz, or the Grand Theogenist, found him in this history, and then they use him as a beacon, a symbol to unite the people. So in this pack, you get 3 versions of Valten. You get his blacksmith's simple blacksmith miniature, you get the one where he's on a horse and he's been trained for battle, and then you've got the final Exalted of Sigmar in the back right there, where he is like in the most glorious pose and just a beautiful figure. I love the transition between these 3 models, and it's a great addition to any collection. I love the Fanatics sprue. The new plastic Fanatics are great, but there's something about these old school metal Fanatics that just really strikes home the seriousness and the savageness of being one of these men who just lost their minds and are now just walking forward into battle to basically die at the hands of the enemy. The FLAGELLANTS are great metal models. You can't find many pictures of them online, but they are really, really cool. The next model on the list is MARIUS LEITDORF, and he is the Elector Count of AVERLAND. The reason I'm showing this old school model first is because this is the one in metal that they offered a bunch of Elector Counts models, so you could put officers in your armies that are supposed to represent the different provinces. So you could say, oh, this is my army from AVERLAND. Here is the Elector Count of AVERLAND, MARIUS LEITDORF. I like this model the best out of all the Elector Counts because he's got his face showing, he's got that very serious, dour expression. I like how he's holding his rune fang sword as well as a dagger. He's just a crazy madman, and when they updated the model here in FINECAST, or in metal and then in FINECAST, they kept the sword, the rune fang, and the dagger. I like the angle, the line, so that the sword looks like it's in the same diagonal line as the dagger he's holding at his side. I like how they've dressed up his horse to make it look like a nobleman's horse, and I like that he still has that mad crazy look on his face. He was known as the Mad Elector, and he was a crazy guy, and he was in head of an entire province. So his history is great. Loved it very much. The next models that I wanted to emphasize are actually a core, put together three packs, 3 different sets of models. The first is the TEUTOGEN Guard. The reason why I say you include them all together, I'm putting them as a single entry, is because Games Workshop, when they were doing this big narrative campaign, they introduced the TEUTOGEN Guard, which were like the great swords, but instead of following Sigmar, they followed Ulrich, the god of winter and wolves and battle. And so you had these older men, beefy dudes walking into battle, and I love the weight of these models. They looked so heavy, and with their big warhammers marching into battle, just a very impressive unit to see on the field. Then you had the High Priests of Ulrich. They were only available in metal as well, and Ulrich being the god of wolves, there are a lot of wolf symbology on both of these models, and they go perfectly with the TEUTOGEN Guard, and they look great. Just look at these 2 models. The last model in this little entry is the AR-ULRIC model. He's kind of the High Priest of Ulrich. So he's got the most accoutrements, the most little bits and bobs on him to paint, the most detail, the most ornate little bits of jewelry and iconography, and he's terrific. Look at that beard, that expression, just such a beautiful model. Second on the list, taking second place, just a crazy idea for a model, is the Empire War Wagon. So this, I actually had one of these in my collection. I bought it because I thought it looked cool, and nobody fielded it, nobody had it, nobody wanted to build it up. All of those walls are just pure pewter. The frame is pewter, it's all metal. I think the only thing that wasn't metal on this model were the wheels and the horses, and it was a pain in the butt. My super glue at the time, I was so young when I had bought this. I had no idea how to assemble a model. Nothing in my brain about pinning. I think I glued all the guys in without even painting the model. Like, if I could redo this model now, I would do it so much differently. I would paint all the miniatures up top. I would use, super glue and activator and maybe even plastic putty to make sure the thing doesn't fall apart the minute you put it on the table like a cartoon. All the walls fall down at once. But this model is such a beautiful, weird piece. You've got a bunch of dudes with different weapons riding on top this portable castle. And I just really love the look of it. The models on the carriage at the top are armed with that man catcher, that's the spiky pole you see, a halberd, some rifles. I think there was a blunderbuss and a flame weapon. It was just this weird idea for a model to have walking down the field, just a castle pulled by horses. It's so strange, but it perfectly exemplifies the Empire and what that aesthetic was all about. The number 1 choice is gotta be these Halfling figures. You can't find them anymore. They're so rare that I think Games Workshop, when they were moving through their cycles of miniatures, they released only 1 element, which we'll talk about at the end as my number 1 favorite out-of-print Empire model. But these Halfling fighters and archers, you can't find them. And I wish Games Workshop would release a sprue of Halfling like militia. They are so great and characterful, and they really exemplify that aspect of the fantasy aesthetic. That you've got the humans and the dwarves and the elves, and then you've got these little half pint guys running around. They match the old Empire, like version 1 of Games Workshop's Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but they didn't translate too well. Especially this guy, a weapon that was basically a hot pot of stew that is catapulted at the enemy, and the commander isn't some artillerist, it's a chef. They're 3 chefs, and they're launching a pot of stew at the enemy. This is the Halfling hot pot. I actually have this somewhere in one of my really forgotten bins of old miniatures. I hope I can dig it up and take a look at it, because it's so great. I mean, just look at these expressions. Look at this model. This is so weird and wacky, and it's what I love about the Empire. The old Empire, anyway, before they got super into the newer aesthetic. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. These are my top 10 old school Empire models, but I'm sure if you've been in the hobby for a while, you've got your own. I'd love to hear what it is. Leave me a comment down below, and don't forget to hit that like button before you go. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you in the next one.